Hi, and today we're talking with Lena Malcolm from the Purple Crayon Playschool. And this is a home-based play school, yes?
Yes.
Yes. So that's a little different than the teachers I've talked to previously. So I want to talk a little bit about what that smaller grouping is like. So I'll let you start and just tell us what sort of the physical layout's like and how many children you're able to have, that kind of thing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So for me, the school is just right in the middle of my house, and it's right in my home, and the kids are in the living room and in the kitchen. And I also have one of my largest bedrooms just devoted towards the school. So we have a little classroom, we have a little wooden table and lots of natural toys and a real space that's just designated for their learning and their play. And I have a fenced in backyard, with a playhouse and um, a jungle gym and lots of things for them to engage with, a garden. And we also go on walks to the forest a lot. So
Nice.
we'll go out and explore and engage. I have I'm licensed for 8. I can have 8 students, and they're usually between the ages of 2 and 5.
That's a nice number to do
Yeah,
group things with, to have enough that,
absolutely.
yeah. All right, and so 2 to 5, so it's really a preschool as
Mhm.
opposed to a daycare. We're doing all the, and let's talk a little bit about that, because I know sometimes I've talked about, preschool is not babysitting. There's a teaching
Mhm.
philosophy and things that go on with that. So let's talk a little bit about what you bring out or encourage when you're doing your teaching with your group.
Absolutely. So for me, there's so many things that I'm trying to do.
Yeah.
But one of the main things I'm trying to do is to really teach them how um, just the skills that they need to be humans in the world, how to interact with each other, how to resolve conflicts as they come up effectively on their own, how to regulate their emotions, how to work through all these complexities of the world, um, and really give them coaching there in the moment as the conflict happens. Like, how do we do this? And as I do that more and more, I see them taking that on and really blossoming with those skills. And another thing that I'm doing is I really see myself as their educator. I
Yes.
am a play school, so I have this real play philosophy. But I think often when people hear play school, they think we're not giving them instruction. And that could be, nothing could be further than the truth. For me, it's like learning becomes an invitation. So I I present them with some piece of knowledge from the world, and then they run with it. And then I present them with something else, and they run with it in their play. So I can tell a story. I was noticing that the children were really interested in marine animals. So I read them this book called, uh, the oh my gosh, now I'm forgetting the book, the Hermit Crab book.
Oh,
A
yeah.
Home for the Hermit Crab.
Yes.
There you go.
Eric
And,
Carl.
and then, a few hours later, I go into this little art station, and there were a few cardboard boxes in there, and the kids are under the cardboard boxes popping out and saying, I'm a hermit crab. And then other kids wanted to join, and there weren't enough cardboard boxes. And so they went and got blankets and pillows, and everybody's under these blankets and these things. And I'm there writing down their vocabulary, their language that they're bringing out of all the nonfiction sources that we've done. I'm also seeing, what do they learn? What did they already know? Like, they know that shells provide safety. So then I'm bringing more, showing them nature video about hermit crabs. I'm bringing in more information. I'm bringing shells and magnifying glasses, and they are going to the table and being like, I want to draw a hermit crab. I have 4-year-olds who's like, I want to write hermit crab. Um, And so I'm like, okay, let's sound out the letters. Let's get an alphabet chart. Let's go. But like, I could not have created any of those lessons plans. And if I did, if I decided they were all going to go be hermit crabs, then I'd have to like convince them, come on, let's go. Let's
Yep.
all get under these cardboard boxes. Let's all learn that shells, and then it's really like me coercing them as opposed to this way of it being an organic conversation between humans.
Following the child and in that.
Mhm.
I had a similar thing, and I'm just thinking it's funny because it was an Eric Carle. I mean, it was the Very Hungry Caterpillar, and we had a big box that was tall enough for the kids. It wasn't huge, but it's tall enough for the kids to get into, and it still had the flaps and everything. And they wanted to, we put scarves in it, and then they would. And it was a child's idea. We were playing with the box, and she went in and she came out, I'm a butterfly. So it became the chrysalis, and and I think there's so much to be said for that, and not also answering questions right away, but putting the things out that they can explore and figure out. And that's huge. And it takes, for a lot of adults, that's one of the difference with the professional teacher. And is that for a lot of adults, it's first of all hard to hold back telling them everything,
Right. Yeah.
and letting them figure it out and having it be physical. And
Right.
so that is great stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
I did want to talk a little bit, we were talking earlier about licensure, because it is important. It's a little different in a home setting, and when people are starting out watching other people's children, even a teacher getting it going at first. And maybe you can say a few things about that and how that works.
Yeah. So the licensing officials, their main goal, in my experience, has been to ensure the health and safety of all of the students. And they do a wonderful job. I mean, I've had such great experiences and such great relationships with all of my licensing inspectors. And they're really there to ensure that, they're checking into making sure I'm bleaching the tables correctly. That, if I have children who are still needing diapers or potty training, that I'm sanitizing everything correctly so that diseases don't spread. And they're also checking, they do surprise inspections. And so they're making sure that your ratios are within the legal limits. And that's something that as a parent, I feel like is a comfort to know that, your provider isn't going to be like taking in, more children, and that you're going to always have that kind of check from that. On the flip side, I will also say, though, that I know lovely small home daycares and preschools that are not licensed. And within the state of Virginia, you can have 4 children that are not your own, and your own in addition, without being licensed. And that is a place where most of us start out unlicensed. So if you meet an in-home provider and you feel like a sense of trust, you feel like you share with their approach to discipline, their approach to these important parent philosophies, and they're not licensed, I'd say go for it. I wouldn't include the licensing in that state as the most important thing, although it certainly does tell you something about their, it gives you a sense of like professionalism and safety, and that those things are going to be in place.
Yeah, and I think you make a good point. The licensing, and we're talking in Virginia right now, and that's about to change, I think, and go under education department, but it's not under education, it's under social services, because it's tied in with daycares and all those things. So even for preschool. And so they're not looking at anything educational. I do know over the years, there's been some influence of certain inspectors to try to find a way to include a little of that. They're not allowed to really talk about that, but they will put, here's what I observed today at the school. They're allowed to do that. And so the ones who care about education will put in, they were doing this great, they were, then try to kind of put those signals in, but parents should know that's not what the inspectors do. They're not looking at the education end at this point, although that may be changing. They're looking at, so that's why, yeah, they're looking at those health and safety things that are on their checklist. And that's why it's important to meet the teacher, meet and visit the location so that you can really see if it fits your philosophy. And if you have a teacher there who is experienced or knows, you know, again, when you talked about your philosophy and going through play, I mean, that's one of the most important things. I do talk about that in the book. Play-based doesn't mean we're sitting watching children play.
Right.
But you can do all of the things that you do. And, you know, there's a friend of mine who teaches at a preschool where they actually, parents have actually pushed in this particular place for them to have this very academically based, you know, things in their last year where they're doing worksheets and things. And we went through the school year and she said, oh my gosh, you do everything we do, but through play. You can set up a PlayStation and you can, like you were talking about, now they want to write, certain kids want to write, you make sure that all those levels are there. Someone wants to write hermit crab, you should help them to do that. So you're meeting each child at the level they're at and giving them those opportunities to grow.
Absolutely. One of the things that I've done is I found like these standards of Virginia standards for early learning or something. And I have these like narrative stories that I tell I have a little app and I'll write down like a learning event that happened that day. I'll just take a few notes and then I'll just connect them for the parents to one of the goals. So I'll like, you can tag it on this app. So I'll just tag like, you know, check it out, they're doing measurement, you know,
right.
You know, check it out, they're doing patterns, or so some of the goals are like interacting with others, building vocabulary, like, so all these things that sometimes can appear to just be superficial or play or for fun, they're actually building vocabulary. They're actually building, you know, number sense, or all these different skills that are actually the state standards for preschool.
So many pre-math skills and things are built right into play, or even with one of my co-teachers used the Magna blocks or whatever, the kids ran out of squares and needed squares. And so she didn't intervene and waited for them to figure out they could put two triangles together. They're doing pre-geometry. They can put the two triangles together. And that physical learning really puts it in your mind, as opposed to someone just telling you those things.
Totally. And the fact that they figured it out, that they now are going to have that instinct the next time they come to a problem to try to figure it out, and not to just wait for the teacher, but to like take in that initiative, which is beautiful.
And it's funny, you would think that a lot of parents might think it's a lot, you know, more work to do, as you were talking earlier, sort of doing all this planning, and we're going to do this way. And then you would be coercing them into doing it, as opposed to, and I think it's harder at first until you get used to it, to step back and see where they're at. And then, as they say, inquiry based, you know, and follow then what they're doing, and just make sure that you have what you need, or what they need there, that there's things that they can get to, like you said, the children who went off and they couldn't have the boxes, well, I could take the blanket, you know, that things are available. You know, I always like having open shelves where if we're doing craft or something, they can go up to the next step because the things are right there for them to get and use. And that takes someone who's not controlling, who's learned to do this and to step back and is not controlling them so much. I liked what you were talking about, where the parents can, you kind of connect the dots for people. I know a lot of the Reggio programs will do that, sort of have that documentation. They have a more formal sort of, but the documentation that they do afterwards for each thing, because as you said, you don't always, for someone who's not used to these learning philosophies and teaching, you don't always realize what's going on in what looks like a simple game.
Right.
We also talk a lot about preschool being about socialization, and you've already brought up a few of those things. They're stepping outside the family and they're having to work through emotional problems.
Mhm.
And I'm a broken record on this, that if something goes wrong, that's a good day, because we that's what we do, and we
Yeah.
get to work through a problem. I don't know if you want to talk any more about that, but that is such an important part of this for this age group.
Oh, yes. I mean, yeah. So I feel like it's for me, it's several things. For me, it's one is that just really teaching children that their emotions are welcome, that they have access to the full spectrum of human emotions. I'm also an actor, and I'm just so in love with our spectrum of human emotions. I think they're awesome and they're here for a reason. And so many times we start already at like birth, just like, don't cry, don't do this, don't do that. So creating a space where it's like your your tears are welcome, and I get what you're trying to communicate to me. And if it's that you maybe they feel unsafe, it's just repeating, gosh, it's okay to cry, and you're so safe, and I'm going to take good care of you, and really like, and it's fine to cry, and letting that feeling just exist in the space, and just staying as that calm, regulated adult for them, just keeps that expression open. And you really know how they're feeling. And then when they're teenagers, they're going to tell you what's going on in their lives. They're not going to think that you want them to always suppress. So much better for the health and emotional well-being. And then the other thing is like, yeah, how do we get along with each other? How do
Takes
we
practice, right? It's like anything else.
Yeah, so there's so many things like I talk so much about this like improv idea of like, you know when you're in an improv scene, you have to say, there's a golden rule, is just to say yes to somebody else's idea.
Yes.
The minute somebody says, I'm this, and you say, no, you're not, the the improv scene is over. And the same thing is true with the kids. As soon as somebody says like, I'm an airplane, they're like, you're not an airplane, the game is over. And there's frustration, and so it's like the kids have to learn how to negotiate. They need to learn how to say yes to each other's ideas sometimes, and add their own idea, and like let this dynamic play space happen. That's the foundation for all of like human conversation. Like, we're saying, yeah, and this is my idea, and this is where it all starts. So I think that's really beautiful and important skill to teach young kids.
And I also think in those games,
Mhm,
you really start to build that empathy. There is one thing where I have found myself sometimes coming in a little bit where they'll be like, "Well, you can't be
mhm,
this
mhm,
because I am," and I will say, "You get to choose what you are, and they
mhm.
get to choose what they are, and it's okay if we have two here or whatever." But I do kind of put on them, "Oh, you got to choose. They get to choose," and
Yeah,
building those as well. Those feelings.
100%. Yeah, and then also conflict resolution. Like, when
Yeah.
when children are at conflict with each other, like building those skills so that they can handle it, and that they have those muscles and those skills. Like, I had an example the other day where this was literally this. I walked into we were in the backyard, and they were in the playhouse, and they were both pulling. There were three children pulling on one chair, and they were pulling it in opposite directions, and the volume was going up and up and up. So I came in, and just stood next to the chair, and first my approach is just to ask them, so what's going on? And it became clear that one person wanted the chair in to the right in the playhouse, the other person wanted the chair to the left in the playhouse, and the third person, the chair had to be in the middle. So I just judgment free reiterated, okay, this is the conflict. And they all said, yes, 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 this is what it is. And then, after that, they had to brainstorm solutions. And there was, we could just leave it, we could just put it in the middle. And the other two were like, no. And then, I don't agree. And then, what if we put the chair out of the house? No, I don't agree. And finally, the solution that was agreed to was, let's bring 2 more chairs into the house. So there can be a chair in each place. And they all said, yeah, okay. And then they ran into the house with 3 chairs in a row. And really what I had to do was like hold that space for them to solve it. And by this point, they've had so much coaching from me that I really just had to hold the space, and they solved the problem.
Wonderful. Yeah, because they are old enough to figure out
Mhm.
ways to go. They just need a little time to think through
Mhm.
and everybody to be heard, right? If only we could get adults to do that too.
Right. This is where
And,
it starts.
and that's a great place, I think, for us to wrap up. Is there anything else you would like to mention?
Oh, no, it's been so lovely talking with you. Thank you so much.
And I'll make sure there's a link to your preschool as well. So if people are in the Charlottesville area, they can check that out. And I just want to
Wonderful.
thank you very much for joining me today.
Okay, thank you so much.